There's big news in the US. Joe Biden has struck a debt deal. He should finally be able to raise the debt ceiling, meaning no default, no doomsday for the global economy. The deal was struck over the weekend by Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The full document was released on Sunday. Now comes the big task, convincing lawmakers to pass the bill. Biden has called the deal a compromise. McCarthy has called it worthy of the American people. Both sides have made some concessions. The key is to convince hardliners in both parties that those concessions were necessary.
We've just spoke with Speaker McCarthy, and we've reached a bipartisan budget agreement that we're ready to move to the full Congress. And I think it's a really important step forward. And this is a deal is good news, I believe you'll see, for the American people. The agreement prevents the worst possible crisis, a default, for the first time in our nation's history.
I'm not sure who you're talking to because we did a conference call with our conference and over 95% were overwhelmingly excited about what they see. They're getting the text today in the process.
So what's in this all-important deal? The most important part is the debt ceiling itself. It has suspended until January 2025, which means the US government can borrow again. That deadline is also important for Biden. He faces re-election in November 2024. So he won't have to negotiate another debt ceiling, at least not in this term. Let me quickly run you through the rest. Non-military spending for 2024 will be the same as 2023, meaning a cap on spending. But in 2025, it can be increased by 1%. That will make the Republicans happy. At the same time, spending on military and veterans will increase. That's something Biden pushed for. He's also agreed to slash spending on tax collection. Biden had set aside $80 billion to hunt tax evaders. That's been reduced by $10 billion. Most Social Security and Medicare schemes have been retained. But there are new work requirements for government aid. Like I said, both sides have compromised. But it doesn't matter what we think. What matters is whether hardline Republicans and Democrats will support it. Especially Republicans. They hold a wafer-thin majority in the US House. Plus, Kevin McCarthy is not in absolute control. He himself was elected Speaker on the 15th ballot. So the question is, can McCarthy get the bill passed? If he can't, all this will be for nothing. We'll be back to square one. So right now, that's the biggest worry for Biden, getting this deal passed in the House and Senate. The stock markets have rebounded after news of the deal trickled in. Oil prices have also recovered. So the short-term impact has been good. But what about the long term? How will this deal affect the US economy? Many experts are worried about the spending cap. Expenditure for 2024 has been capped at the 2023 levels. That could hurt American recovery. Bloomberg says there is a 65% risk of recession in the US. To avoid that, spending must increase. It's Economics 101. If you want to reverse an economic downturn, you must spend more. This deal prevents that. Spending will not increase next year. And the year after, it will increase by just 1%. Problem number two is liquidity. Once the deal is passed, the US Treasury will hit overdrive. It will have to raise a lot of money in very little time. How do they do that? By issuing bonds to the private sector. It's normal business for the Treasury, but this time the scale is massive. If the Treasury usually issues 10 bonds in one day, it will now have to issue 20. This could suck liquidity out of the system, reduce the amount on money held by the private sector. And what happens when liquidity disappears? Again, slow down. Bank of America says the impact will be equivalent to a 25 basis point interest hike. That's not good news for the US economy, especially not right now. All these challenges tell us one thing. The US debt ceiling is dangerous. Maybe it promotes bipartisanship and accountability, but only if the leaders are mature enough. In modern-day America, that doesn't seem to be the case. Leaders have repeatedly weaponized the debt ceiling, used it to politically blackmail the sitting president. So maybe that should be the biggest takeaway from this crisis, the irrelevance for the debt ceiling.